Welcome to Tuesday Talks. I'm Seema Kumar. Today, we're delving into transformational healthcare initiatives under a newly created federal healthcare agency established under the Biden administration only 2 years ago, with an initial appropriations of about $2.5 billion. Known as ARPA-H, or Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, this agency is dedicated to pioneering moonshot healthcare solutions that transcend conventional research and commercial efforts.
ARPA-H will pursue ideas that break the mold on how we normally support fundamental research and commercial products in this country. Ideas so audacious that people say they just might work only if we could try. Well, we're about to try in a big way.
We are actually going to find, create, and accelerate high-impact health solutions to well-defined problems. If an ARPA is successful and it does that, it actually also demonstrates what health futures are possible for all.
Joining us today is Dr. Joe Schunkweiler. He's the Chief Operating Officer of ARPA-H, where he oversees the agency's business and administrative operations. His journey into healthcare innovation began in New York City, right here, as a general surgery resident at Columbia University Medical Center. Over time, his passion for healthcare startups led him to a pivotal role at Amazon Web Services, or AWS. At AWS, he harnessed Amazon's resources to support biotech, health tech, and medtech ventures, accelerating their development from inception to market. Dr. Schunkweiler also founded and hosted the AWS Health Innovation Podcast, a platform highlighting global entrepreneurs and investors shaping the future of health and life sciences. Joe, welcome to Cure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how do you like Cure so far?
It's a really impressive space. It's really lively and alive, which is great to see in the current environment. So yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, and you're back in your hometown. And before we get into all the work that you're doing at ARPA-H, tell us a little bit about, what is ARPA-H? How did the agency start?
So the agency, as you said, is about 2 years old, founded in March 2022 by the Biden administration, with the idea that you would have moonshot funding, things that weren't usually funded in the commercial space or by traditional non-dilutive funding, and really take those big risks, the big chances, but the big opportunities on the back of that. A sizable initial appropriation of about $2.5 billion, and an independent structure. So we are within the Department of Health and Human Services and within NIH, but not an institute. We have our own budget. The director reports to Secretary Becerra, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So there's a lot of nuances to how we're set up within the government, but all of them are to promote that big moonshot vision.
It sounds a lot like DARPA, right? The Defense Agency, Research Agency, right? Is this the health version of DARPA, or is there a difference?
There's some key differences. We are modeled on DARPA in how we are organized and how we operate. I could talk a bit more about that. I like to say we have a lot of DARPA DNA within the agency because the director came from DARPA previously. We have a lot of our program managers and mission office directors came from DARPA in the past. There are a couple key differences. I'll talk about what's similar first. So similar is obviously the mission, the independence, the autonomy, the problem focus that we have as an agency. It's a bottom-up decision-making approach to solving the biggest healthcare problems. Some of the key differences are, one, we have a much broader mandate. So DARPA, I've never worked at DARPA, but my understanding is their focus is on the American warfighter in where their innovation is. You can do a lot of things within that mission, obviously, but we have a much broader mission in that we're focused on better health outcomes for everyone, for all Americans, and we don't have a built-in go-to-market, so to speak. So at DARPA, when they innovate or develop something new, the Pentagon tends to pick that up. You're not sitting around wondering who's gonna buy your stealth fighter or whatever it is. We don't have that same structure in healthcare, as you know. HHS doesn't have that same function. So we have to think about go-to-market opportunities for whatever we're innovating so that there's a pull out in the marketplace from time zero. from the very beginning of program development, we're thinking about how will this be utilized? How will this be taken up by the payers and providers and patient groups or whatever it is? There has to be a pull from out in the marketplace for it.
That's interesting. And, obviously the goal and the mission for the agency is very lofty, right? Which is to revolutionize healthcare by supporting projects that may transform how diseases are treated, diagnosed, prevented, ultimately saving and improving, lives and thousands of lives and maybe even millions of lives. So there are so many diseases to treat and cure one day. How are you all deciding, what projects to support? Because it just seems so vast, the
Right.
problem that we need to solve in healthcare.
Yeah, it's humbling
Yeah.
to have such a broad mission. One of the things we look at is we have 4 mission areas. So these take the form of 4 offices that focus on particular areas. And they're really broad. You can imagine many, many different healthcare, life science innovations and challenges fitting into those offices. But it gives you a flavor of how we are organizing the universe. And they include health science futures, which is the net new science that you see out in the world. Resilient systems. How do you create a more resilient, interoperative healthcare system that withstands crises and pandemics and things like that? Proactive health. How do you keep people from becoming patients in the first place? And then scalable solutions. How do you reach the broadest number of people as quickly as possible? And within those 4 areas, you're going to see a wide breadth of innovations, projects, programs, et cetera. But that's sort of how we're thinking about the universe in terms of categorizing things.
And, the thing that strikes me as slightly different from NIH is that here you're looking also at the translation, but also its adoption in the marketplace and its ability to reach as many patients as possible in communities, right?
Right.
So it's not just basic science focused. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean, NIH is amazing, and we're proud to be part of that community there. We are, as you said, focused on getting things out into the real world. So we know that we like to say things have to live on their own in the wild beyond ARPA-H. And that's a big focus for us. We also have a team purely dedicated to that tech transition effort, the Project Accelerator Transition Innovation Office, or PATIO. And they're a big part of that mission. And again, they come in at very early stages for these programs to say, this is what the market dynamics look like. This is how what it could live and look like beyond the ARPA-H funding.
So as the COO, I would imagine that you're consistently measuring impact, right? With R&D processes typically taking 10 to 15 years from discovery all the way to development and getting to the patient, right? How do you look at metrics and success?
Yeah, metrics are really important to us. As I said, we're focused on impacting patients, getting to real-world impact. On the operations side, we use OKRs. We work within the best in the industry frameworks to do it. We also, because of the way we operate, we're designed to be as much like a private sector enterprise as you can be within the public sector. And we really focus on measuring what we're doing, getting to outcomes, getting to impact. And that's a big part of what we do. So we have borrowed on industry best practices. I came from Amazon, as you mentioned previously. So we've tried to pull over as many of those best practices as we can, because we are really focused on that impact piece and getting to the maximum number of patients that we can. And that's true across the operational side, but also on the programmatic side. One of the interesting elements within the ARPA model, we like to call it high contact program management, where rather than just putting a grant out there and people working off of it and spending it, we actually do contracts. We do things called other transactions and cooperative agreements, very flexible contracting vehicles. But then our program managers, really the lifeblood of the ARPA-H model, are out there tracking metrics quarter on quarter, month on month, year on year, to try to get the maximum impact as quickly as we can, and understand that in some cases you're going to have to pivot with those funds, right? So this looks a lot more like a private sector enterprise in a lot of ways than your traditional public sector funder.
Yeah, so just to, underscore the difference. So unlike an NIH grant, which is another way you could procure, funding from the government, that's a grant, and you have a grant for a particular project. This is more like a contract, right? with milestones
Exactly.
and specific, deliverables that are due. And that's where the high contact comes in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And I think of them a lot like contracts, and we do contracts as well, which is a big difference from your traditional public sector funder. And it allows us to work with a much broader, what we call a performer base, so the folks that are getting funded by ARPA-H. So it runs the gamut from academic labs, industry, startups, the whole range of fundees, which is really gratifying to see from my seat at the agency.
What does success look like? When will you know that you've actually gotten to where you need to?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something we think about a lot. Back to that impact piece, like when you're actually impacting patient care and outcomes, and that's really the ultimate measure. We know that can take time, even if you're trying to accelerate that as much as possible, and that's not lost on us. The success is really getting to that scale, operating at the platform level, making sure you're touching as many people as you can with whatever you're doing. And the range of programs that we have, you can sort of see that there's going to be a variety of different milestones along the way. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the specific programs, but when you think about the scale and scope of the agency, we're funding everything from our initial program, Nitro, which is focused on regenerative medicine and osteoarthritis and how you can essentially cure osteoarthritis, all the way through to a recently announced program called Upgrade, which is focused on cybersecurity and ensuring that you have automated security protocols at hospitals to protect themselves and their patients. So that's a huge range of activities within healthcare and life science.
I know, like on the one hand, you're talking about regenerating tissue, and then on the other hand, you're talking about, hospital, healthcare systems and cybersecurity. I mean, that's like beyond end to end.
It really is, yeah.
How do you keep track of all of this?
Well, we have, back to that high contact program management, each of those efforts has its own deeply knowledgeable expert that's managing that operation, which certainly helps. And you basically have these really high-functioning enterprises, even within the agency, managing those programs. The program management and program manager setup is a really interesting thing. And as I said, it's really the driving force for the agency. We hire these folks that come on as a full-time federal employee for 3 years with an option to re-up for another 3. But when you think about a 3-year term, every 2 weeks, that's 1% of their time with us. And so it's go, go, go. Like you really can't sit around and wait for things to happen. And we get these folks that are just, world-changing people. And they have these world-changing ideas. It's really exciting. On the business operations side and the rest of the agency, we're all aligned around de-risking, supporting, providing the infrastructure to make that work, which is something I'm sure is very relevant for you and the Cure team.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, de-risking and, increasing the probability of success is what it's all about. And then the more you do that, the better the outcomes are. And the more the entrepreneurs are happy and the outcomes for the world are better. So how many programs are there? And can you talk about how these programs are set up?
Yeah, so we have 17 program managers now. I always have to be, it changes day on day sometimes.
Yes.
The programs are set up such that you have a program manager that leads the effort. They recruit a team internally to do that. They come up with the idea, vet the idea. Once the funding for that idea gets approved by our team at ARPA-H, they then go out and propose it to the rest of the world through something called a Proposers Day. We're having them all the time now as we have programs launching. And then that helps them build a performer team, which are the folks that then get funded to see that idea to reality. As the COO, I can tell you that we don't run labs, which is not the worst thing, but we fund a lot of labs and a lot of folks that are doing these things out in the universe. And then you're into that management phase where the metrics come into play, these contractual agreements come into play, and it's really you're finding the best and the brightest even within those performer teams to do it. And as I said, you may have pivots along the way. Things may work, things may not work. So it's much about identifying what's working as it is identifying what's not working, and then really honing in on the stuff that is working along the way.
Recently there's been a lot of focus on women's health and research on women's health and putting a particular focus on women and their health. And differences, the sex differences in male versus female for the same diseases, right? And then the latest initiative that was announced by the White House, right? Since the announcement, it seems like everybody is jumping on the bandwagon, right? And ARPA-H is playing a significant role in this whole arena of women's health, the research project. So how are you approaching the diagnosis and treatment of some of these illnesses and the problems that desperately need to be solved? What do you believe are the real benefits of this initiative?
Yeah, I'll go back a bit to the structure of the initiative because it's been really exciting for us to see it come together. And the White House has been very involved in this, as you said. We take a problem-focused approach to solving any of these big problems. That's true across the agency and across how we do it. And I think this is a great example of that, where we don't start out top-down saying, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on this disease area. We start out saying, okay, we're going to allow the problems to come up and then find the solutions to those problems. And that's how this process evolved.
Yeah, it is a bottoms-up approach.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So with the umbrella of women's health, we've identified 6 areas within women's health that we want to focus on. One of those is sort of a catch-all grab bag, of like any innovative approach. So you really think of like 5 specific areas. And these are things like women's health at home and objective measures of chronic pain.
Ovarian cancer.
Exactly. Like really important things, maintaining ovarian health later in life. These are really problems that have been identified by input from a variety of stakeholder groups. We had our program managers involved. We had outside groups involved in doing that. And we're about to head into the pitch phase for that in the next couple weeks, and then into the award phase, I believe, in the fall. But it's been amazing to see the response from the community about the opportunity of highlighting this. And it's $100 million that's been allocated to do it. So it's a sizable amount to fund this. But it really is both a great view into this problem focus, but also getting to real world impact in what we're doing. And we're really excited to see it all come together. But it's sort of a microcosm of a lot of the ways that we've been trying to operate.
How does one get involved? I mean, how does one apply for these grants? What do you have to be, and how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, there are a couple avenues. One of my pitches to your audience would be to come to our website, check out the existing programs and program managers. We have each of those offices that I mentioned before, the Health Science Futures and Proactive Health and Resilient Systems, et cetera, all have their own funding mechanisms, innovative solution offerings or ISOs that folks can apply to. That's one area. And then applying to become a program manager. We're always looking for these folks that have these world-changing ideas to apply to take on that high contact program management themselves. And that's really where a lot of the activity is. But we have multiple avenues. We also have things like the Women's Health Initiative, and I'm sure we'll have more of those in the future as well.
That's great. And, we talked a little bit about, this, your mission, right? That stretches from the molecular level all the way to the, access and, community level. How do you, from an operations perspective, manage this huge scale? Like, must feel like a little bit of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it's a lot of, the program managers and that infrastructure is a great guiding light. So we have a very strong mission, which is true of a lot of organizations in the healthcare and life science space. Really keeping an eye on that big vision is a big part of that. And then everything is measured against what we're doing to support that. So my teams that do finance and HR and IT and data and that tech transfer group, all of that is all in support of that bigger mission of achieving better health outcomes for everyone.
Let's talk about innovation. As you are aware, Every Cure was one of our Cure Exchange Innovation Challenge winners. And just days after, they were awarded by ARPA-H a sizable grant of about $48.3 million to drive their AI technology forward. What they do is actually take AI to repurpose marketed drugs for new indications, and it's very exciting. And what was the ARPA-H view on choosing Every Cure for this award?
Yeah, it was. They were through a program called Matrix, which is focused on using AI to repurpose those medications, and it's. I mean, it's such a compelling story. You know, I don't have to tell you or
Yeah.
your viewers on that. You know, we do have a focus on things that have application to multiple disease areas that live at that platform level, can have that huge, broad impact, and I feel like Every Cure is a great example of that. And it's such a compelling vision and mission that's definitely aligned with what we're trying to do at ARPA-H. We're really excited to see it come together and are proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, and we're proud to have them here as part of the Cure ecosystem, and constantly rooting them on,
Right.
and wishing them all the success. Now, before we go, last year, AI was all the buzz. It still is, right? ChatGPT 4.0 just launched, I think. So we have a lot of technological advancements happening, but there is some level of concern about AI, but also concern about cybersecurity and challenges around that. How are you looking at the challenges of new technology, not just the opportunity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's one that people are asking all over the world, really. I guess I'll go back to something I mentioned earlier in how we're thinking about harnessing that power and other elements of computing to protect hospitals and patients. There have been a lot of high-profile issues in this area lately, no surprise, Change Healthcare and other areas where this has been a problem. And we have an incredible team at ARPA-H that is they had a program called DigiHeals that was focused on this, and a new program called Upgrade that we just recently announced that is focused on automatically patching these vulnerabilities that exist out in hospitals and health systems to prevent those cyber attacks and ransomware attacks. Having worked in a hospital system myself, although many years ago now, the diversity of entry points is so significant.
Yeah.
And the variation in how they're covered. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but as I said, I've seen it in the hospital personally. It's we talked about the challenges of running a large operation on the operational side. It's that and then some in a hospital system with the highest possible stakes.
Yeah. I mean, people's lives are at stake. So, it's like, high pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, high stakes, as you said. So, Joe, the ARPA-H model is based on like a hub and spoke sort of network that is technically spanning the entire country, right? And this way, the idea would be to create a broad and vast countrywide network. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a model that's based on having 3 physical locations per our statute. And those are the hubs, one in Dallas, Texas, focused on customer experience, one in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the greater Boston area, focused on the investor catalyst, catalyzing the investor community, and a stakeholder and operations hub in Washington, D.C. But it's really not just those hubs, it's those hubs and then having spokes out to all 50 states, so across the country, with the goal of meeting patients, meeting the folks that need this innovation where they are. You can't just do that innovation and get to everybody that we need at the scale that we've been talking about from those 3 locations, no matter where they are. You have to have a presence in all these areas.
We're thrilled to be chosen as a spoke based in New York City, both for the Investor Catalyst Hub as well as the Customer Experience Hub. And so we're looking forward to being part of the network.
Yeah, we're excited to have you part of that community.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's always a pleasure to see you. And again, it must be nice for you to be back in New York City. And thank you for visiting Cure.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining. And for more information on our work here at Cure, go to www.wewillcure.com. See you again next week.